This not all that special presentation of Street Track failures gives an honourable mention to the following commenter, Pescara Productions, which for reasons that will become plainly evident at the beginning of this video, unintentionally yet comprehensively ruined the entire point of doing this video in the first place. However, thanks for highlighting this track all the same. Normal programming shall now resume. Loads of you have been filling up the comment section with several suggestions for tracks to use in this series. All your suggestions made me realise just how many street tracks there have actually been in motor racing. To put into context where we're at with this series, despite being on its 40th episode, I think we're only just past the halfway point of all the tracks I'm able to cover, which not only is astonishing to think about, but from my perspective is also quite a scary one as well. However, when setting up for this potential series, I had a couple of starter tracks to get the ball rolling. Yet so far, I don't believe I've seen anybody comment on wanting an episode on this particular track. So in that case, let me introduce you to Phoenix Park in the Republic of Ireland. Motor racing began here in 1929, although it was used for speed trials as early as 1903. The Irish International Grand Prix was held at a track that was 4.25 miles in length and took place in the 1930s, although this was well before the days of Formula 1. The track's life was interrupted by the war and came back intermittently from 1950 until 1962, where it would become a mainstay. Not that you would know it by how many times they'd be changing between two separate layouts. In truth though, both layouts were incredibly straightforward, although just because these tracks were quite simple on paper doesn't mean that these tracks are, by any stretch of the imagination, not unique. I mean, this is from 1990, and here are some small yet awesome boxes thundering their way to turn 1, with lampposts either side, protected by small tyre bundles around them. This particular layout is called the Hawthorne Circuit, named after the famous Grand Prix driver Mike Hawthorne. And as you head towards turn 1, called Mountjoy Corner, the hard shoulder is not restricted, like it is in daily use. It's free game in this instance. However, before we talk about the track as a whole, it would be rude not to factor in just the general sights. Walls? What walls? The pavement curbs are still there, trees still readily available to hit, and just the vast expanse of greenery not just make this a unique circuit among street tracks, but just in general, one of the most unique racetracks that has ever been created. And this expanse of greenery wouldn't go away for the rest of the track's lifespan, which would be until 2012. Anyway, when you've done Mountjoy Corner, which is a 90-degree right-hander, so some things don't change, it's now on to the creatively named North Road, which is a terrifying piece of tarmac. The road is similar in nature to the sort of narrow single-laned country roads you get in the British and Irish Isles. You're going well over 100 miles an hour on bumpy and unforgiving roads, with little to no barriers to stop you from hitting the shrubbery if you have a scary moment, along a never-ending right-hander. It's then a progressive left-hander before diving on the brakes for a tight hairpin called the Ratra Corner. Braking seems difficult to get right, which perhaps isn't surprising given the bumps, and lack of any brake reference points, although at least there is a barrier there to stop any overshooting cars in their wake. Now onto the only proper left-hander on the track, which is a just about flat-out kink, but at least there is a pavement curb on the inside of this corner to at least give you some sort of reference. Then it's on to what would become later on a roundabout corner, a section where the track limits were governed by some bales. It was a long right-hander, in which you had to take the third exit, coming out of Monument Corner and onto the Chesterfield Straight, which is an almightily long straight. A straight which did have some marshal areas, some of them were just some skips with a few bales in front of them. And that was a lap of the Hawthorne Circuit. But like I say, another layout was used for the Phoenix Park area, which was called the Old Town Circuit. This would be used from 1993 to the track's demise in 2012. Also, as a side note, a Nissan Skyline was used in various years as the emergency response / medical car. It's not that often you get to say that the medical car is actually faster than the race cars in the field. Anyway, if you thought that the Hawthorne Circuit was simple on paper, well, the Old Town Circuit makes the Hawthorne Circuit look like Silverstone. On a straight that's nowhere near as long as the old circuit was, The first turn is now an even tighter 120-degree right-hander, ordinarily one of the better overtaking places on the track, but its tight radius does mean that bottlenecks generally develop at the start of what is known as the Dublin Corner. It's then onto Furze Road for one of the longest straights on the track. However, as the years went on, there were some advancements made to the circuit. A speedbreaker style chicane, thanks to these not at all menacing plastic barriers and traffic cones, which allow for only a single file order. But even more advanced than that is the addition of some braking markers. Quite frankly, I'm glad that the chicane was put there because, certainly in single-seater cars, an impact with a pretty solid tree not too far off the tarmac would not be great, irrespective of the large hay bales in front of them. Then it's on to Furry Glen, a corner that's basically identical to the first turn. The only difference is that on the exit of Furry Glen, the grass is basically a no-go, with the single-seaters leaning quite a lot onto their right-hand side as they go onto the verge. Another long straight greets you, except this time it has a slight kink in it, which is called the Ordnance Survey. Not gonna lie, watching cars go along this stretch of road in particular is quite uncomfortable. The slightest error and well, you're either going to hit nothing or something that will barely move whatsoever. The final corner is marked by these helpful traffic cones, and then you reach Mountjoy Corner. It is the same corner name as Turn 1 on the Hawthorne circuit. However, on the Old Town circuit, it's a bit different. Mountjoy Corner is formed on a junction where you can go left or right. On Hawthorne's, you're on the main straight that brings you to Mountjoy, and then you turn right. For Old Town, you're coming in from the left junction, which brings you back onto the main straight. I hope I've explained that in a reasonably clear manner. Probably not, but never mind, let's just move on. Mountjoy Corner, while still a 90-degree right-hander, is taken a bit faster than the one at Hawthorne's, with the extra width of the main straight being a key reason why that is the case. But the narrowness of the road prior means that overtaking is rather tricky. And with that, you're back on the main straight, and a lap is over. Now, you're all probably wondering about the pit lane and where that is. Well, there wasn't one really. You see, the championships that were competing towards the latter half of Phoenix Park's lifespan as a race circuit were Irish club level championships. And because those races don't generally last all that long, with a pit stop not being required, I guess they felt as though there was no need to create a pit lane. That alone, though, pretty much sums up this circuit. As racing around it began to evolve, this stayed stuck in the 1950s, with just the machinery racing on it getting more modern. A truly unique racetrack this one which I'm very sure will not see ever again. This event would end in 2012 due to a lack of sponsorship. As the money for the event was less, the grids got smaller and smaller. But also perhaps it was just down to this track not being suitable anymore for modern racing, unless major new upgrades were put in place. The only track I can even vaguely compare this to is the Goodwood circuit, but even then, whilst it's a hark back to the past, it's been restored in a modern way, just giving a very retro feel. Phoenix Park isn't that. It's very hard to summarise this track, to be honest, or rather tracks. I'm glad though that it existed for as long as it did. Racing's reminder of what it used to be like. That though is going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any other street tracks that you'd like to see featured in this series, then say down in the comment section below. Plus, I'm intrigued to know if any of you like this circuit as well. With all that being said though, until the next video, be kind to each other and enjoy the rest of your day.